We're on page 179. Maran had said that somebody who sleeps in his talit, in the morning he has to make a new blessing even if he didn't take it off. But then it's good to move it around when you make the blessing, so it kind of counts as a new putting on.
Is it the nighttime that's the chatzitz of the separation, or is it the sleep that's the separation?
Very good. So this is what we're going to look into right now. Let's do this together. It's the footnote on the left side of page 179. Say that I have not done this in advance, so we're going to learn it together. Maran HaBet Yosef Katav. Maran, in his book Bet Yosef, he writes, Sheledat HaRambam, that according to the opinion of the Rambam, the Svirale, that he holds, the Laila loves man tzitzit hu klal. The nighttime is not a time for tzitzit at all. Meaning, you are not at all obligated to be wearing tzitzit at night.
That means whether you're sleeping or not sleeping.
Yeah.
According to Rambam.
According to Rambam. Remember I told you last week, we ended off, and I'll repeat, that there are two different opinions as to what it means. In the Torah it says, you have to wear the tzitzit uritem oto and see it. So there are two different opinions. One says, at night, you never have to wear tzitzit because technically you couldn't see it if there was no light. And the second opinion is, no, it's not a matter of the time of day, but rather the clothing that you're wearing. Is it daytime clothing or is it nighttime clothing? So the Rambam's opinion is, nighttime is not a time of tzitzit at all.
Okay.
This is his opinion. According to him, Davar Pashutu, it's obvious that his opinion is, that you have to make a blessing in the morning, because from when the sun set or the three stars came out until the morning when you're waking up, that entire night was a hefsek. It was an interruption, and even though you were wearing it, you weren't receiving any kind of mitzvah for it. V'sheken katav harosh b'tshuva, and that's what the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher, he writes in a letter as well. V'tama haBet Yosef, and the Bet Yosef is surprised al divrei haTur, about the words of the Tur. Now the Tur is the Rosh's son, right? And the Tur says shekatav she'en tzarich levarech, that you don't have to make a blessing in the morning if you sleep in your tzitzit. So he is directly arguing with his father. Now, who else is surprised at the at the Tur? V'chen katav litmoha haMahari Abuhav. Mahari Abuhav was one of the rabbis in Tzfat in the time of Maran. B'chidushav the Tur, in his commentary on the Tur, he also is surprised that the Tur would say you don't have to make a blessing in the morning. V'chen pasak b'Shulchan Aruch Kan, you find here in the Shulchan Aruch, the Maran, if Maran says you make a blessing, so who's he holding like? Like the Tur, like the Rambam? If the Rambam says you can't wear tzitzit at night, meaning it doesn't count, so therefore you would need to make a blessing in the morning. And the Maran says you have to make a blessing in the morning. So who's Maran holding like? Like the Rambam, and not like the two. V'chen pasak b'Shulchan Aruch Kan, and that's what Maran means here in the Shulchan Aruch. V'chen hiskimu kama achronim, and a few of the achronim agree with Maran as well. Vayen lahagaon bal divrei Yecheskel. There's a rabbi who wrote a book called the Divrei Yecheskel, and he says, "B'haskamato l'sidur dat kedushim." In his approbation to the sidur called dat kedushim, shekatav, he writes the following: "Sha'af atur dato ken," that even the Tur, even the son of the Rosh, agrees with Maran that you have to make a blessing. So how did the Tur say that you don't make a blessing? V'yesh ta'ut sofer batur. There's a printing error inside of the Tur. Uv'makom, and instead of the words en tzarich levarech, you don't have to make a blessing, tzarich lomar en tzarich lefoshto. It should have said you don't have to take it off again in order to make a new blessing. That's what it meant to say.
There's no guidelines in the Torah?
No, the Torah is pretty vague on this, which is why the rabbis are fighting over it. So that means that
How does he know? Yeah, that's a whole word.
now we'd have to look into this Divrei Yecheskel on ourselves, on our own, which I don't have in front of me. But my assumption would be one of two things: either it doesn't make sense that the Torah would argue with the people he's arguing with, or that he has a different printing edition of the Torah which says the original text. That happens very often.
In those days.
In these days too, we have many books that are being used that are not accurate.
You mean Jewish books?
Sure, Shulchan Aruch itself. There are many things in here that are not accurate. It says every time it says goy. Most Shulchan Aruch say akum. There's a Catholic church censoring going on. And the Talmud is full of places where akum is ovdei kochavim umazalot, those who serve stars and constellations. The Christians' whole thing was we're also part of the chosen people. So we're goyim, but we're not pagan. We're not in the category of goyim. And so the Christians came because of the new chosen people. They made the Jews substitute the word goy everywhere that it comes up with the word akum, which is the pagans, as in to separate themselves from the pagans and include themselves in the chosen people. And we still perpetuate this force. This still to today. We have the famous Aleinu. You ever read the synagogue where they go, they don't say it, or they have it in parentheses. The Catholic Church took the sentence out that they bow down to nothingness. Why in the world are we still davening with the nusach of the Catholic Church? It's a nusach of the Vatican. I don't know what I would call it.
Because it's in the art scroll.
So what do they? No, they say it's tradition.
Are we doing it even in our new Siddur?
No, the Sfaradim never had this issue. What the Sfaradim have, and you might notice, is in Aleinu, the original text of Aleinu said, "Anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim." Korim is when you fall to your knees. Mishtachavim is when you bow your head, and modim is when you really, you put your head on the floor. The Sephardic text says because nobody's bowing on the floor anymore, we just say the words "Anachnu mishtachavim." We just bow. We don't actually get on the floor and do it.
Kippur or something.
Right, Kippur though it doesn't. It's funny. We don't edit it there. We don't change that there. I once asked Rabbi parents if you have to. He said no. The word "hishtachavot" just means any kind of bowing. So it's a generic term for bowing. But a Catholic nusach, it's almost comical that we still do such things. It's not just Ashkenazim. Sfaradim, we have in all our books. It doesn't make a difference which country you came from.
Common.
Well, our luck were that the Arabs didn't read well.
Catholic is some common thing with the Jews.
What?
Something common with the Catholic and Jews.
Sure, they killed us. That was common. We had, what do we have in common?
Somebody told me that, I don't know.
I don't know what we have in common. They have the first half of our the first half of their book is our Torah. That's what we have in common.
And they mistranslated that part.
Plagiarized.
Changed a few things around.
Listen, the Kuzari says that definitely the Christians brought many people to the belief in God in the first place, or the belief in the Mashiach in the first place, which is a step up from what the world used to believe. Rocks and sticks and all kinds of things they bow to. But to say that we have things in common, you're not the only person who says this. Jews love to tell us about how we're just like the Christians, and the Christians like to tell us how much we're just like them. And anybody who knows anything about Judaism will tell you, I don't think so. I don't know what we have in common.
And they're trying to blend it more and more. I googled the Rambam's short Birkat Hamazon today, and like 1,000 Hebrew
for Christians websites come up.
Brachas for Christians, and they do a transliteration that says Yeshu.
Well, see, this is something like Christians have a certain identity crisis, which is if Yeshu was Jewish and he lived in Israel and he lived in the times of the Talmud, all kinds of stories like this. So how is it that our religion is so English or American or Latin when they feel very divorced from the source?
Yeah.
And so there is a movement in this world to kind of reconnect to the origins. I found a Christian church that celebrates Purim here. How do I know? Because when I went to get a costume for Purim, there was a whole church in there getting costumes for Purim. So what are you guys doing here? Oh, we celebrate the Feast of Esther. So since when? Well, our pastor decided we have to be more like the Jews. So why don't you just be Jewish?
It's said like 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's more of a trend, like this guy who was unfortunately killed up in San Bernardino was like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Wore a big Jewish star to work.
Oh, yeah.
We should help people who have this desire to figure out the truth. We should be there to help them.
Somebody did research, they could not find early life of Jesus. Earlier life. All things come later. There's no way you can find out.
Well, the birth records, what are you going to look for?
Not birth record. How he lived, where he lived, at a certain age. Nobody knows.
Just read the Talmud.
No, the Gemara treated him as a very irrelevant figure. He wasn't as famous as they would like him to have been. There were famous people in his time that were not Jewish, but he wasn't one of them.
Became older, they became a big. But before that, he was just a regular Jew.
You know, Rav Kook has a very interesting piece, and it's one that I don't preach all the time, but it's important to know. Rav Kook says that when talking to people about their religions, irrelevant of Christianity or Islam or any other religion in the world, our purpose is never to put down their leaders. He said, rather, the purpose is to bring them closer to the truth. He said, and inevitably, by coming closer to the truth, they will realize the fallacy inside of their leaders. But if, the first thing we do is, Yeshua didn't even exist, and Yeshua, in their bones, they feel he existed, so you already close the door to any kind of conversation. And it's amazing that Rav Kook has, the same Rav Kook, when his diary writes that when he walked by a church, it stank to him as a child, like it smelled so bad that he couldn't be next to it, like a spiritual smell.
Rav Kook, that happened to him?
Yeah, he as a child, it says he was never able to walk by a church, that it smelled like a bathroom, he writes. That's what he wrote. Like as a child, he said he remembers as a child, his neshama wasn't able to handle walking by a church. But the same Rav Kook said that you have to have a sensitivity. You're dealing with people in the world who have a faith, they have a religion, and I don't appreciate. There are some rabbis, their whole thing is to knock Yeshua and to knock. It's okay. I'm not from the camp that says Rabbi Yeshua, a famous guy. It's not my cup of tea either. But if the purpose is to bring people close to Hashem, then help people come close to Hashem by not throwing wrenches in the machinery at the very beginning. Wait a little bit. The person will figure it out on their own. Anybody who comes and learns some Torah, learns a little bit of Jewish philosophy, already on their own they'll realize that Hashem, it's impossible that He came down as a man and died on a cross and such things. That someone flew on a donkey from Halevy. These things fall apart on their own. We don't have to do it for anybody.
Virgin births.
Jacob. Father Jacob.
I've witnessed that like in my lifetime, half dozen times of people that sort of don't ridicule them, don't try to challenge or deny what they're thinking about, but on their own they start just asking more questions.
Well, Jews are not
Just give them the
sort
answers.
of.
Yeah.
Jews are not by nature
I really got some
religiously
perspective years later.
confrontational.
Yeah.
That's why this guy, he stood up to the Muslim and about Israel, and it's like
Or the guy San Bernardino.
yeah.
This whole idea of spreading the word of Hashem, we do have this concept, but sometimes you have to be smart when doing it. I'm not talking here, it's not a tactic, it's not a missionary tactic, like, don't tell them and then we'll hit them on the head when they're not looking. That's not the point. The point is, it doesn't do us well when we spend our energy belittling someone who to them is very important.
Negative.
It's with any person. Somebody might have an abusive father. But in order to get them out of that relationship, you first have to say, you can't disrespect him or else you'll never have a chance of even talking to this kid. Because in their head, he is a god. So you have to kind of wean a person off of it. It's kind of like, when we were in, Elchanan was born, I was in the hospital, there was a baby that was born to a drug addict. And it was a terrible thing. They have to give drugs to the baby when the baby's born. Right. The baby didn't even do drugs, the baby just was born. But the idea is that even that has to be weaned off. So obviously, you're not going to raise him on drugs. You're not going to put in his formula. But there's a certain weaning off. You can't just disconnect somebody from something that to them is in their blood. It's a yisod.
Wow, very good point.
Ulam habach. The Bach says, the Bet Chadash says, V'ataz, and the Torah Zahav write, Katvu lochiach medivrei harosh b'psakav. Oh, wonderful. Look at these guys. Not guys, Chalil. They're big Talmid Chachamim. But they're the exact opposite of the Divrei Cheskel. They say, no, not only are you incorrect that the Torah is a misprint, but rather we have proof shechazar bo me'otat tshuva, that the Rosh took back the letter which he wrote. And that makes sense now why his son, who came after this letter, he's not arguing with his father, rather he's representing his father's true opinion. And they hold that therefore you don't have to make a blessing. And Rashi has this opinion. The Prisha has an even better suggestion. This is the Rosh in that letter. It's not that he took it back. The Rosh was just saying what the other opinion was, not his opinion. He was answering for a different opinion. And what's the Rosh's logic? Lo katav ken. The Rosh didn't write this. Ela lefi ma shepiresh hashoel. He was only explaining the questioner's words. The Laila lav zman tzitzit kla. The nighttime is not a time of tzitzit at all. V'leit lo svarale. But he didn't hold this opinion. He was just paraphrasing the question that the person was asking him. Ela da'ato dekivan deksut yom chayav b'tzitzit afilu balayla en tzarich levarech. His opinion, rather, the Rosh, if the Rambam says that not wearing tzitzit at night is because of the nighttime is what makes it hefsek, the Rosh, who's the opposite opinion, says no, the nighttime is not what does it. Rather, if you wear daytime clothing at night, you're obligated in tzitzit because it goes on what kind of clothing is it, not what time is it outside. And therefore, according to the Rosh, did you ever stop doing the mitzvah of tzitzit? Even though it was night?
No.
No, why? Because you're still obligated in tzitzit because the clothing you're wearing is daytime clothing.
So it's like when you put on whatever the equivalent of pajamas was, then you're no longer obligated.
Very good. Now there are practical
That would
differences
seem
in
to
this
be
case.
Am I wrong to think that would be more of a minority opinion?
The second opinion.
Yeah.
Well, it's not fair. The Rambam, we always beat the world to the pulp because of the Rambam. But it could be they have a valid point. It just seems to be that the Rambam right now is the most straight opinion. The other opinion has on whom it's not based out of nothing.
But it would actually be very important because if there's no status of a mitzvah in any sense except, I guess, al pi Kabbalah, there's a status because there are Rebbes who wear tzitzit even to sleep.
Okay, so the final conclusion at the end of the day is we kind of take both opinions into consideration. What is the difference? Tell me practically the difference. Don't be afraid. I'll give you the Rambam and the Rosh. The Rambam says any clothing you wear during the day and it's four corners, you have to put tzitzit on. Any clothing you wear at night, even if it has four corners, you don't have to put tzitzit on. The Rosh says it doesn't make a difference which time of day you're wearing the clothing. Rather, what time of day was the clothing? Is it daytime? Is it like outside wear or is it indoor wear? Is it bedtime clothing or playtime clothing? What kind of clothing is it that you're putting on?
There's a complication to that. What if you wear that bedtime clothing during the day? You're not feeling well.
Oh, very good. So tell me what you're saying. You're wearing a bedtime clothing, okay, with four corners, which doesn't have tzitzit during the day.
Yeah.
According to the Rambam,
You'd have to.
you'd have to. You're violating a biblical mitzvah of putting on tzitzit. According to the Rosh,
You don't.
you don't, because it's a nighttime clothing. I don't have to put tzitzit on it. Now reverse the situation.
Mostly for
What if you wear daytime clothing at night that doesn't have four corners? So you have a four-corner garment that you didn't wear during the day, but it's meant for daytime wear. You didn't have a chance to put tzitzit on. Say he knocks on your door, you immediately throw on this four-cornered poncho that was meant for daytime wear, and you go to the door. According to the Rambam, is it okay to wear that at daytime clothing at night without tzitzit on?
How can you say the bracha at night?
That's a weird
It's not a
question.
mitzvah.
According to Rambam, no.
Forget the bracha. Right now I'm talking
You're
about
required to have tzitzit because it's a four-corner garment. So how
But
can
but
you,
because the Rambam holds that nighttime is not a time that requires
maybe you
tzitzit,
can just
Regardless of what
prance
you're
around in the poncho.
the Rambam says so long as it's night, you don't have to put on four. Even if you're wearing it, you don't have to put on tzitzit. According to the Rosh,
You do.
You must.
because what is it? It's daytime clothing.
We do that according to second opinion.
So we follow both opinions. At the end of the day, it's what it looks like. We're strict like both opinions.
All right.
We do the same thing somewhere else. Do you know where we do this? There's a famous fight, Rambam and Rashi, about how long you wait between meat and milk.
Ah, right. So
Yeah, I've heard 6 hours and I've heard like 1 hour.
Oh, so the amount of time, I'm not going to get stuck on the hours, but why you wait. The Rambam holds the reason you wait is because of meat that's in between your teeth. You eat, and so there's always going to be something stuck in your teeth somewhere. And the Rambam gives a 6-hour formula. It says after 6 hours, even if something is stuck in between your teeth, it already lost all its flavor and it's no longer considered meat.
And also digesting. It takes time to digest.
This is Rashi.
Leftovers.
Rashi says, no, it has nothing to do with meat stuck in your teeth. When you eat meat, then, forgive me, you burp. And so when you burp, a flavor still comes up. That flavor is meaty. And therefore, so long as that flavor hasn't passed, you are still considered psari, which, okay, you could say that it's also 6 hours. I'm not here to discuss how long Rashi
What it
waits.
is that the food is still in your stomach rather than having been churned up and gone to your intestine.
Okay, that's practical. That would be the difference. Very good. So now answer this question for me. What's the practical difference between the Who cares which opinion you hold by? Both of them hold you have to wait.
Yeah.
In which situation would the Rambam say you don't have to wait?
Oh God.
If you have milk first.
So we're always talking about having meat first.
Okay.
In which situation would the Rambam say that you don't have to wait at all?
When your teeth are clean.
Again, you had meat, and then you brush your teeth and floss them very well. According to the Rambam, right away you can have a glass of milk.
If there's no pieces
Or
of meat.
cheese.
Yeah, or cheese. Or you can just check your mouth, like, clean it out.
Yeah.
How much you can clean
Remove
that?
the doubt.
According to Rashi, if you would eat dairy, then you'd be violating a prohibition of eating meat and milk together. Now, tell me the opposite case. In which case would the Rambam hold it's not allowed, but Rashi would hold it's okay? Talk to me about babies. Before you had blenders.
Oh, grinding baby food?
Very good. How did he used to? Mother, she used to feed her child some chicken or fish or whatever she was eating. Meat. How she didn't have, so she wouldn't want just take it from her plate. She would chew it in her teeth and take it out and give it. And it sounds gross, but she would give it to her baby.
No, that's.
Now she did not swallow anything. So according to Rashi, go for it. According to the Rambam, what do you mean? There's teeth. Maybe somewhere in your teeth there's stuck a piece of meat. You have to wait 6 hours or clean your teeth. What is the halakha? Who do we follow? We follow the stringencies of both opinions. So even if you just chew meat for a baby and then you floss your teeth, you still even if you chew meat and swallow it and then you floss your teeth and brush it, you follow Rashi, where it says you have to wait however many hours. And then even if you were, let's say the Rambam has a great scenario. What if you just swallow the food without chewing it? There's some gluttons that do such things.
Or toothless wonders.
No, that's just the thing. In that situation, we still would be strict, like Rashi and like the Rambam, in every respective situation.
like
So we're doing a similar thing here, inside of the
It's
halakha.
like smoking, not inhaling.
So let's look here. At the bottom, I just want to skip the rest of the part and get into a little bit of Kabbalah with you.
Everybody woke up.
It seems like the most Achronim argue with the Shulchan Aruch. And there's a rabbi, Shalmei Tzibur, heard from Rabbeinu Avraham Yitzchaki, said he has a handwritten letter that Rabbi Yosef Karo took back his opinion in the Shulchan Aruch that says you have to make a blessing, and rather he also holds you don't have to make a blessing. I love such letters. Nobody knows where they are, nobody recorded what it said, just they remember they saw a letter. I'm sure it's true, but if I have to choose between what's written in black and white or what's told to me that someone else said, what am I supposed to do between the two of us?
Don't we have collections of letters of Kehillat?
Sure we do, but he saw a letter that was handwritten. He was in the in Maran's house or whatever it was. And you believe him. He's giving testimony. Of course I believe him.
You would just take your iPhone. And
But how do I know if it came before the Shulchan Aruch or if it came after the Shulchan Aruch? Or at the end of the day, I only have what's in front of me.
Yeah.
And what's in front of me, and not only is it in front of me, I'm not just stubborn because Maran says it. It's obvious that Maran held like the Rambam. It's not a surprise for me that Maran follows the Rambam. And according to the Rambam, obviously you make a blessing. So according to Maran, it makes a lot of sense that Maran would also say to make a blessing. It would be very strange for me actually to hear that Maran is arguing with the Rambam. That would already be a strange thing for me to hear. But who am I? V'osif Shalmei Tzibur sheken nira dat ha'arizal. The Shalmei Tzibur adds, I'm reading the last 4 lines of this paragraph. The Shalmei Tzibur adds that the Arizal's opinion is שלא היה מברך אלא כשמסירה מעליו בבית התפילה. He would not make a blessing in the morning when he woke up in his tzitzit. Rather, he would make the blessing when he took it off to go to the mikveh in the morning. So when he took it off and he came back to put it back on, so he made a blessing.
That's how we solved that
who is
problem.
this again? I'm sorry.
The individual
That
who
Arizal.
slept in the
The Arizal.
oh.
There's already the daily mikveh thing in that time.
Sure, Arizal is the father of this movement.
I was in Tzfat.
That's why there's a famous
The
Arizal
Arizal
mikveh. That's where the story is from. Okay, let's read on top of 180.
What kind of
I haven't
mikvah?
partaken.
There
I
are
haven't.
all kinds of
Amazing
mikvah. What kind of
experience.
mikvah?
4 kinds of mikvahs.
You shake head to toe.
I don't know what 180. 180. It says
from
under the 2
spiritual.
lines,
Spiritual aspect of oil.
"V'tov latzet yidei safek." It is good to remove yourself from any doubt. U'lechaven beverchat talid gadol, And have in mind when you make a blessing in your talit, liftor talit katan shalan ba balayla, to have in mind that it should cover the tzitzit that you're wearing at night. Because according to everybody, if you're putting on a new talit, then you would make a new blessing. So according to all these opinions, you would make a blessing in your talit gadol. So what you should do is just anyways, you have in mind that when I'm wearing my big talit, if I need to make a blessing in my tzitzit like Maran, it's covered inside of the blessing for my talit. And practically, that's what we do today. There's one more consequence that comes out of the sugya of whether or not nighttime is a time of tzitzit or not, and that is, what happens if you put on your tzitzit before dawn, before the time you're allowed to put on tzitzit? Early. I mean, you woke up early because you had to catch a plane or a bus. Now the sun rises. Do you have to make your blessing again? Is it the same thing? I mean, how long of night has to pass over you for you to have to make a new blessing? According to Maran, the Rama says that if a person put it on before dawn, and then after dawn he's still wearing a tzitzit, he has to make a new blessing, like Maran. It seems like Maran would hold like that. So we say, "Hamakdim lilbosh talit kodem zman hamitzvah b'shachrit." Kodem zman hamitzvah b'shachrit. If a person puts on their tzitzit before, or the talit before the time in the morning, v'no yichol levarich alei, and you're not able to make a blessing, yivarich alei ksheyagia zman hamitzvah, you make a blessing when the time comes. V'mashmesh b'tzitziot in the morning.
So you're wearing it, and all of a sudden it gets light, and then you
make a blessing,
even though it's already on you.
Yes.
And you just shake them around a little.
Yeah, very good. V'mashmesh b'tzitziot b'shat ha'bracha. You should move them around a little bit in order to be putting it on again. Now, the Beit Yosef here mentions that that's not a halakha. You don't have to move them around, but it's a suggested opinion to try to satisfy some more opinions in halakha. This is the last paragraph. We've been doing this for a long time.
Which page we are?
The next page is the end of this section. 181.
We've been doing this for a very long time. Let's read the last maran of the section. Nitkasa bebeged shu chayav b'tzitzit. If you put on clothing which is obligated in tzitzit, meaning it has four corners, but it doesn't have tzitzit. V'lo hitil bo tzitzit, and you did not put on tzitziot. Bitel mitzvat aseh. You have held yourself back from performing a active commandment, a positive commandment. So understand, there are two kinds of mitzvot. The Torah doesn't say you are not allowed to wear a four-cornered garment without tzitziot. Rather, what does the Torah say? When you have a four-cornered garment, you must put tzitziot inside of them, on them. And therefore, we see that there's a positive mitzvah to put tzitziot, but not a negative or a passive commandment of you're not allowed to wear it without tzitziot. And so there's kind of a middle concept. One is to violate a mitzvah. I'm not keeping. It says you have to don't light a fire on Shabbat, and I'm lighting a fire on Shabbat. But when it says keep Shabbat and a person doesn't keep Shabbat, they're two separate mitzvot. And when it says put on tzitziot and I don't put on tzitziot, I'm not violating a negative mitzvah, but rather I'm not fulfilling an active positive mitzvah. And therefore, mitzvah of tzitzit falls into this category because it only has one commandment, not two. Understand how this works? The only way it would be forbidden to not wear a four-cornered garment is if the Torah would have used the words in English. Tell me in English.
Not prohibited.
Yeah, thou shalt not wear a four-cornered garment without tzitzit, something like that. But it doesn't say that. Rather, what it says is active. You must put on four corners. So if you don't, very good. If you don't, you're losing out on the biblical mitzvah. It's a similar question about when we have to immerse dishes in a mikvah. The Torah says you must immerse the dishes in the mikvah. It doesn't say it's forbidden to not immerse them in the mikvah. And it's really the prohibition of using dishes that were not immersed in the mikvah is rabbinic, not biblical. You're losing out a biblical mitzvah, but the prohibition is only rabbinic in nature. Understand? In every mitzvah in the Torah, you should find out: is it a biblical? Is it rabbinic? Is it a positive, negative? It helps understand certain aspects. Let's look into the last halakha, halakha bora. Isur levishat beged shel arba knafot v'lo tzitziot. The prohibition of wearing a four-cornered garment without tzitziot. Asur lilbosh beged sheyesh lo arba knafot ve'en bo tzitziot. It is forbidden to wear a four-cornered garment that does not have tzitziot. See, he's already using his own words. V'amu Chazal and our Rabbi say, Kol she'en lo tzitzit bevigdo, over b'chamisha aseh. A person who doesn't have tzitziot on his four-cornered garment is violating 5 biblical positive commandments. He's holding himself back from 5 commandments. Where does he get 5 from? Upiresh Rashi. Rashi says, "Shover al mashneimar." You violate what it says. V'asu lahem tzitzit. You should make for yourself tzitzit. And then v'natanu al tzitzit, and that you should put on the tzitzit. V'aya lachem the tzitzit, and you should have these for you as tzitzit. What is uritem oto? You should see the tzitzit. And then not in the Shema that you say, but in the later part of the Torah, it says, Gdilim ta'aseh lecha, that you must make fringes on the corners of your garments. That's the 5th mitzvah that a person violates. V'hainu shlovesh beged shel arba knafot ve'eino matil bo tzitzit. This means a person who wears a 4-cornered garment and doesn't put tzitzit inside of it. Or on it, that is more correct English. V'chen pasak HaRambam, the Rambam therefore rules the same way, Shim nitkasa beged shel arba knafot below tzitzit, that if a person wears a 4-cornered garment without tzitzit, bitel mitzvah taseh, he holds himself back from fulfilling a positive mitzvah. The Rambam doesn't mention these 5 things that a person doesn't fulfill. So the Rabbi said, why doesn't the Rabbi mention it if that's what it says in the Talmud? So he says, what difference does it make if it's 5 that you violate, or 8 that you violate, or 20 that you violate, or 1? It's still a violation.
Even the 5 is divided 1, make it to 5.
Okay, it's a 1 chapter, but it's still 5 mitzvot aseh. And essentially what they say is the Rambam, the only reason the Talmud mentions these 5 things is to show you how important it is for a person to wear tzitzit. And I cannot stress this enough. I've told you many times before that a person does not have to wear tzitzit under their clothing. But how good is it if a person can wear tzitzit under the clothing? It's such an easy mitzvah. Every second that you're wearing tzitzit, you get mitzvot. There's no reason. There's not a person maybe can never take off tzitzit. It's a big mitzvah. So it's not what halakha says. Great. Okay. But you can. This is one of those things that you're not showing off. Nobody even has to see it. It's under your clothes, tucked into your pants. Who sees it? It's between you and Hashem. Hashem. We need a lot of zchuyot. And B'ezrat Hashem, that is the end of this chapter. Siman tov u'mazal tov u'mazal tov Siman tov u'mazal tov u'mazal tov Siman tov u'mazal tov u'mazal tov Siman tov ye'elanu 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 u'lechol Yisrael Yisrael Chai V'Kayam David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayam. This one deserves a siyum, so I'm going to talk to the Rabbi about it. Eli, we should finish many books of Shulchan Aruch together. Very, we should learn many more stuff. Many more. And we should learn many more books to talk about. There, we should learn many more stuff. Oh, we should learn many books of Shulchan Aruch together. Thanks for being part of this group. Yeah. We have a few more minutes. I'd like to sit with you, if you give me just a few minutes, to go through. Some of these next chapters are not so relevant if you're not creating your own tzitzit or making your own garments. Tying tzitzit is an important part of the halachot. But let me take you through the next chapters, and we'll decide what's relevant and what's not for us right now. The chapters that we choose to not do in depth, my thought is that we'll just go through Maran and the Ramah, so we'll do the tops of the pages, so that way we're not, God forbid, skipping parts of Shulchan Aruch. We just don't have to do all the notes and the extra halachot, and anything that's relevant that I feel you should know, I can always add in for you. Or unless you tell me, we just want to plow the whole way through, but I'll tell you what the topics are, and then you'll understand why I'm having this dilemma. The first, chapter Tet, is which kind of clothing requires tzitziot on it or not. Meaning, which fabrics, which kind of fabrics, what happens if you have two kinds of fabrics on the same tzitzit? What if half of it is wool, half of it is this? What color should the tzitzit be? Those kind of things.
Fabric. Linen and plain.
The what?
One tzitzit have two kinds.
Right, because we buy our tzitziot today, so they already took all the stringencies of the book. My suggestion is in much of this section, not all of it, but much of the section, to just do Maran and the Rama, and where it really is relevant to things that we have today, to go into the sources. Would you agree with me on this?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, Yud. Yud are the corners of the tzitziot. What happens if you have an article of clothing that has 5 corners?
5 corners?
Yeah, or an article of clothing that has 3 corners. What do you do in a situation where you cut one of the corners and you make it into 2 extra corners, but it used to be 1 corner?
Cutting the corner.
Don't cut corners.
All kinds of halachot like this. What happens if you have a cloth talit, but the corners are made out of leather? Is leather one of the materials that needs tzitzit? What if the corners are made from a material that doesn't require it? Imagine this. Imagine you had a wool talit, but the corners are made out of plastic. Imagine such a thing. I'm making up a scenario. So do you put tzitzit because the garment needs tzitzit? Or do you not put it because the corners are made out of something that's not required for tzitzit? These kind of situations, I'm sure they would be great for us to dwell and learn. And I just feel that we're using our time in our evenings to learn things that are more than the maaseh.
You're the navigator, so you know.
And that's more applicable.
I feel some of these are applicable, and some of them we should just read Maran and Rama. What do you guys feel?
That's fine.
We'll let you Maran and for interest, so we can go more.
Okay, so why did that? Well, we'll go through these Maran and Rama, and if you say, "Hey, this is a great topic," one of you will mention, we'll go inside, and that will never hold us back. Some of them are yesodot, like some of them are rules that the Sfaradim and Ashkenazim are divided on. Like on page 223, when the Rama is arguing here, those are important for us to go into, but I'll take care of us when we get there. Yud Aleph is really where it starts to get
Ramban is in a higher plane.
closer. It gets warmer. The strings of the tzitzit, and this is where I would go back into the full swing of learning, and that is who's allowed to tie tzitzit? Men, women, children. How do you tie tzitzit? Which orders? Why the numbers? What about Kehillat? All kinds of things like that. This is already very relevant to us, and I would suggest that we pick up in depth on page 233. I don't know about Kabbalah, but we're going to have all kinds of beautiful things in here. And what happens if your tzitzit start to fray at the tips? What do you do in that situation? What if one of your strings rip? These are practical situations that happen to us a lot. I feel that this is where we would go back inside in depth.
Can you hire your maid to...
Right. Can you hire your maid? Or what about this? I had an interesting question. A bride and a groom. They wanted to tie, she bought him a talit, they wanted to tie the strings. Can a lady tie tzitzit? She's not obligated in the mitzvah of tzitzit. So essentially, is she really any different than someone else? So here it goes down to the question, so is a lady not obligated? Or is she exempt? Meaning, could she obligate herself, and then therefore she could also tie herself? Or is she exempt completely, meaning even if she were to obligate herself, she wouldn't be able to? That already goes down to a big machloket between Sfaradim and Ashkenazim about the corners and who can tie and who can't. And you'll be surprised at some of the discussions that come out there. These are just good... Or what if you want your kids to help you tie tzitzit?
I have not seen ladies...
You got a new talit. You want your kids that are under bar mitzvah to help you out. Or grandkids, or whoever is relevant.
I have not seen ladies wearing...
Eli, if you go to some other shuls, you might find all kinds of things. How long do the strings have to be? What if your strings get progressively shorter as the life of your talit or your tzitzit go on, or the amount of time it's been through a washing machine? How much do you really need to be kosher in order for the whole clothes to be kosher? This is already where I think we should get back into the depth. So, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll pick up tomorrow from page 182 in order so that we don't make a hefsek. We don't stop somewhere. Let's just start the first Maran. Okay, Maran on page 182, Siman Chet. Eze begadim chayavim b'tzitzit? Ve'eze pturim mitzitzit. Which clothing is required to have tzitzit, and which clothing is exempt from tzitzit? Like which kind of materials? Uvav vav seifim. It's not a long section. It's 6 seifim. The first Maran is as follows: En chayav betzitzit min haTorah ela beged pishtim o shel tzemer rechelim. The only clothing that is obligated in tzitziot from the Torah, meaning biblically, are articles of pishtim, are the word in English.
Like a woven or a fan or sewn or something?
It's such a like that's a word that I'm supposed to. Flat linen? Could it be linen is the word?
Linen clothes?
Let me get you. Forgive me that my English is. I feel like I'm an immigrant or something. Look at this.
Jacquard.
I do have a couple of linen shirts that are made out of linen, 100% linen. They're white.
What are we looking at? Which word?
Linseed. Linseed?
Linseed is an oil that's used for
Okay,
fabric.
so not
I
that.
think it is an oil.
It's not used for actual cloth.
We're going to get into...
Wait, sometimes it's used to preserve clothes.
Is it? Okay.
Oh, flax. You can
Flax.
make clothes from
Flax.
flax.
Okay,
It
so...
says she weaves, like it says in KSH Kollel, she weaves clothing from flax.
Yeah, fine flax. That's what it would be.
Yeah.
Flax clothing. Okay, so only flax, that's the word. Flax, I think of a seed, but...
It is a seed, but it can be turned into... Yeah.
So, flax or wool? Shaar minim, but any other material aside from
Linen
flax
today
or wool...
would be considered the same as flax, I think.
What is
In
it?
the old days.
Yeah? I don't know what linen is made
Linen
of.
is made from plant material.
Okay, so there you have it.
What linen clothing made out of? Isn't it like a
Plant.
Okay.
Yeah.
But not all plants.
No.
For like cotton, for example, bigdei
it's
shaar
not a
minim,
cotton, it's
other materials, ein chayvim b'tzitzit ela mid'Rabbanan, are only required to have tzitzit rabbinically. So when the Torah uses the word clothing, we're going to discuss tomorrow how this works. But it seems like our rabbis understood that biblically the clothing they wore was made out of wool or flax. It wasn't made. I guess linen is linen the word for flax. Today.
Yes.
Made out of linen or wool. There was no other clothing. So the clothing that came up afterwards, the rabbis obligated us to put tzitzit on them, but they're not biblically obligated to have tzitzit on them.
Polyester.
So rechalim is the wool? Or?
Yeah, tzemer rechelim, wool of lambs. That would be
Linen and wool.
and wool. V'yesh omrim, and some say, this is the Rabbi steps in, Dechulhu chayavin midoraita, that all the articles of clothing, no matter what fabric, is obligated from the Torah. V'hachi hilchata, and this is the halacha. You automatically are hit with the conclusion that it makes a big difference if a person is Sephardic or Ashkenazi, if they want to wear a tzitzit or a talit and receive a biblical mitzvah. And everyone's going to receive a mitzvah at the end of the day, rabbinic or biblical. But if you want to fulfill the most hidur way, biblically, according to Maran, you would have to wear clothing either made out of, your talit or your tzitzit would have to be made out of wool or linen. And if you're following of the Ramah, so the Ramah would say anything, cotton, the nitzit, all these things would fall into the category of biblically required tzitziot. That seems to be the halakha on the street, but the street is very much influenced by the Ramah. According to Maran, if a person really wants to follow a higher opinion, he would wear wool because he'd receive a biblical mitzvah.